Who has a need for speed? How many of you think the next generation of cars are going to be boring or slow? How many of you have been in a car at 200 miles an hour, generally? Not very many. I had the opportunity about 2 years ago to go to an event with the next generation of cars, and I stepped into a BMW that I did not recognize next to a young German driver who said in perfect English with a German accent, "Do you have a need for speed?" He then put me into a 3.5G turn in an electric car. So what I want to talk about today, if I can get a slide, I'm going to start with this screenshot from Tron. Have any of you ever seen the film Tron? Why am I starting with this screenshot? Simply, it's skeletal, it's on a neural network. All of us have about 80 to 100 billion neurons in our minds, and there are about 1 billion cars on the road worldwide. Well, I'm going to argue that cars are going to become more and more skeletal. They're going to become faster. They're going to be more and more intuitive, and they're going to be run by our human brains without the use of our hands. Now, the surprise for all of you today is we asked, the TEDx team asked students to provide illustrations or ideas, concept cars, of the next generation car as they perceive them or hope to perceive them. The surprise is I asked a friend of mine who's the head of a major car company by the name of Larry Black, who's working on next generation of cars, to look at these slides. I'm going to start with, pardon me, my voice today. I'm going to start at the beginning. So Jackie Stewart said a racing car is almost an animal. It's very highly strung and with no warning can change its mind. On the right is an illustration from 1910 from a book about Tom Swift, a fictional boy who designed an electric race car, which is that car. I was thinking to myself, looking at Tom Swift and having read that book, why can't each of you design a car? We can. We have enough computing power, as I'll tell you show you in a couple of minutes, to do all the body work of a car, which is 350 pieces. Where are we now? We're at fossil fuels, or some combination of fossil fuels and hybrids. We're in hybrids. We're moving to pure electrics, which are can run at least 180 miles an hour if you want them to, some cases. We're moving rapidly toward fuel cell cars. Anybody ever driven a hydrogen car? I've driven a hydrogen car. They're not intuitive. You have no sense of motion when you start. You have no impulse sense. Now, the advantage of this car, quickly, which was designed in England, is most cars, as we know it in the United States, are designed from the outside in. This car is designed from the inside out, starting with the fuel cell. Cars in the future will be a combination of rocket science with what I call racing DNA. They'll still look like cars, but they're going to be more interactive. Now, this is a BMW. I haven't actually seen this car. It's a car in what's called plasticine or modeling clay. And the thing about it that I want you to remember is, well, let me ask you this. How many of you would like to just on a daily basis change the way your car looks on the exterior? Any of you? This car and other cars that we're going to look at, including student cars, you can. You take what's called the body work off the chassis, which are the wheels, and you plop in another car, a different car, for to be a sports car or a utility vehicle. This car is obviously inspired probably by some C form. We're moving, all of us know what the Internet of Things are, right? We're moving very rapidly to the Internet of Self, whereby each of us is going to have a real choice as to our transportation mode. We're going to be able to create an app, a car, from an app via open source software. The hydrogen car I showed you has an app in which everybody in this room, if they wanted to, could contact River Simple with ideas. Those ideas would be evaluated in real time and potentially incorporated into their car. I personally think this is the way cars are going. Am I the only one in the room who thinks that's a beautiful car? I think so anyway. I've never driven this car. I don't think this car has a propulsion system in it, whether it be an engine, hybrid, or electric. Okay, these are student cars. I promised to keep the introduction short. I want to make a couple of quick comments about Dash's car. You see this line right here? That's called a strake, S-T-R-A-K-E. Car designers have 27 different terms they use in the design of a car. This car stood out to me for two reasons. One, the strake, which gives you that sense of speed, and the tires. Primarily because there's tire research going on right now in this state and other places on the planet in which the tires store and transfer electricity. And that electricity can be used to power your home or your devices. Okay, Brenda, I have to read something to you. First of all, I had questions about Brenda's car. I had questions in here in terms of whether this windshield could actually be done. So I sent a note to Larry Black, and it got through his people. And I said, Larry, is it possible for Brenda's car to be designed with that kind of windshield? He said, Bill, nowadays it is. Forming the glass is not an issue. They can introduce a broad range gradient tint so the occupants aren't baked in bright sun settings. I'm not sure that the transition tinting will work in such a large size, but I guess that's not needed. Nice cat, Brenda. Fabulous car. Fabulous car. That's not idle praise from Larry Black because he is the meanest SOB in the valley in terms of design. He's a brilliant designer. Okay. I apologize for the slide on the right. It's not the artist's problem. It's that the reproduction of that slide was almost impossible. So let's start with coal. You have a real sense of speed with this car. Does this have a 4-barrel? What's your propulsion system? Regular engine? Carbon fiber? Is that removable or? It could be. And you've got a wing. Carbon fiber wheels? Maybe? This car is beautiful because it's a throwback to when none of you, and just, well, with a couple of exceptions, weren't alive when these cars were built by friends of mine. Not with the wings, but that's a great ride. I appreciate it. All right, Tara. And I really apologize for the reproduction quality. It was done in pencil, maybe, or well, it's a cool ride because it has they're called Vartorella front wheels. The front wheels are smaller than the back wheels. That's a problem for design engineers in the business of tires because most of the testing is done on larger size wheels. Okay, so that is going to be a design issue potentially, but not much of one, because with the kind of car you've designed, they'll probably use one or two, traditional size of wheels. Can you talk about what's going on back here just a little bit? I thought your design cues were interesting. Right.
and run on that and brain power. Because they tell us like your brain can power specifically because like if you use all of it, so maybe you could power the car can amplify neurons and can drive the car.
Absolutely. Great ride. Thank you. All right, I know you're out here. We're going to start. No, I'm going to leave Emma to last. We're going to start with Ian. Really sort of a 1950s look back here. It's really cool. Is this, I want to ask you this. Anybody else has a question, throw in. I meant to say that on anybody. Is this an autonomous car, or does this person actually have the opportunity to drive it? And is it for 4, or is this 2, 4, 6, 8 people? 8 people. It's a nice ride. What inspired you to come up with this design? The Bugatti is probably the greatest name in design cars, other than Ferrari, but I'm Italian, so that's a great ride. Thank you very much. All right, Emma. This is a really, really interesting futuristic piece, and I'm not sure if it flies, if it drives, or if it swims. It's a very Jules Verne piece. And I think it's gorgeous. It's called the Dragon. Anybody have any comment on this? Yes. Alien? Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to move on here. Brain drive. We've been talking about brain drive. It exists. Remember this. You are the last generation of all biological humans, period. The next generation exploits the mind, machine, robotics, and work by exoskeleton. This student is driving this car, no hands or feet. You have 4 contact points to drive a car. Your hands, your feet. About this size, obviously, very small. With her mind. This car is programmed right, left, forward, accelerate, stop. And this is probably the future of cars. Aston Martin, the DB5, the James Bond car that many of us know, most of you know who James Bond is. The next generation DB5, Aston Martin announced this last week, you have a choice of it being autonomous, regular drive, or full-on sports car mode, pedal to the metal, which I think is pretty cool. Now, we can't download a car, can we? Well, we can. Students in Europe have found a way, pretty easy way. How many of you own cell phones? I asked Kevin the other day how many seats there were here, and we did the basic calculation. We have enough computing power on our cell phones right now in this room to develop what's called the coachwork, the top of the car, easily, and then 3D print it. It's being done in Europe, which I think is pretty cool, because each one of you would have a part of a car. What the illustration on the right is simply just different ways, and any art majors in here, that's Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, okay? Different ways that you could interact to access data, hold data, and send data back out. Whether it be from Google Glass, which I know and all of us know has been sort of pushed to the wayside. It's not really a supported technology anymore. Upper arms, earbuds, embedded in your jewelry. Someone's told me there's a watch out there apparently made by Apple. I have a watch on too, It's the highest G-force watch you'll ever see unless you're an astronaut. This thing right here can take 10 Gs. It's a certified F1 chronograph. And I've put this baby to the test before at 5 Gs, which means my neck and my head were basically two different places. Literally, it pushes your neck. G-forces, lateral G-forces push your neck. So we have enough capability right here, right now, to do this. See the top of this? That is your design, meaning the design that anyone in this room placed on top of what's called a skateboard chassis. When I'm arguing, in a skateboard chassis, your propulsion system is in the chassis. And I use the word propulsion system primarily because it might be an engine. This is the chassis. By definition, a chassis, I don't want to overextend this, but you've got your propulsion system right here, which is about a foot in depth. It needs to be about 4 to 6 inches to be really functional. And your suspension elements. And what you would do is go out to your garage every day and you would make decisions as individuals as to whether, do I want the sports car today? Going back to the Tron image, remember? Do I want the sports car today? Do I want the people mover today? Am I really tired and lazy today? Do I want to go autonomous? This is my challenge, which I call the Elysium Challenge. If I were running South Carolina schools and considering the supply chain that we have to BMW, depending on how you figure it, 250 to 400 tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers to BMW in the state, which is known as Little Detroit, I would link every single school in this state, form something called Automobiles Without Borders, and I would create the next-gen prototype in plasticine, that's modeling clay, using those tier 1 suppliers, of course for nothing, to create a production intent vehicle. That is design slang for a vehicle that you guys can go out and actually run. So that's my spiel today. I really appreciated the student inputs, and I really, really appreciated all of them coming down and giving us their perspective. You guys have been great, and thank you very much.